Welcome back to the sandwich series where I'm on a mission to find the best sandwiches from all around the world and craft every single element from scratch, every last detail to make the perfect sandwich at home. I think this is episode 4. We've done 3 episodes already and we are moving into some fan requested stuff. This one came from a few fans actually highly requested this one, and I had never tried it before. And like always, I was putting out some teasers on Life by Mike G, my Instagram. So I put out one, offered a little prize. I got about 80 submissions. No one got it, but I don't blame you. Just from a bread roll, it's not easy. Then I put out the second teaser and it was some homemade chorizo, and then everyone got it. It was a no-brainer at that point. We are doing the Choripan, which is an Argentinian delight. It is like the ultimate street food there, and chori, which is chorizo, short for chorizo, and pan, which is bread. So it's basically just chorizo bread, and that's pretty much all it is. It's really, really simple. There's only 3 elements in this sandwich. You have the chorizo, you have the fresh bread, and then you have chimichurri. So traditionally in Argentinian cuisine, the choripan has chimichurri. Not too many other condiments. A lot of times it's done very simply with just those 3 ingredients, but you do see this sandwich all over South America, so you'll see different variations. I'm focusing on the Argentinian one, and I'm doing a homemade sausage, which I'm pumped about and a little nervous because I've never made sausage before, and we're gonna be doing a specific chorizo, Argentinian style chorizo. And then we're doing some just fresh rolls, and I couldn't really figure out like a specific recipe for the choripan in Argentina, so I just went with the best attempt at a sandwich roll that I could do, and then some fresh chimichurri. 3 ingredients, boom, that is your sandwich. So let's get after it. I did a bunch of research, and to be honest, there's not too much out there on the choripan. There's a few videos, a few recipes, so I'm working with what I got here. I've never had this actually in Argentina, but maybe you guys can, some of you locals can give me the true tips, see if I'm doing anything wrong. But for the actual bread, I figured I would just make an incredible crusty, sort of like, not long roll, but just bread roll. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna start off with 1 yeast packet, and I'm gonna activate that with about 1.5 cups of warm water and a tablespoon of honey, and just let that activate for 15 minutes until it is nice and bubbly and you smell that yeastiness. Then I hit it with 1.5 cups of flour, and I let that sit for about an hour, and you'll see it's really gonna activate and rise at this point. Then I mixed in another 1.5 cups of flour and around 8 grams of salt. Once that's well incorporated, I like to let that sit and let the glutens relax before I start to knead it. It's gonna really help with your dough kneading process. Then you can get after the kneading, and same sort of situation here with all of these breads. Just knead it for about 5 minutes to really develop the gluten structure. Once that's nice and supple, then you can place it in a bowl with a little bit of oil and let that double in size for about an hour to an hour and a half. After your dough has doubled in size, you can come back and you can just deflate that and then split it up in a few pieces and just form those into nice little balls to work with. Let those rest for about 10 minutes, and now we are gonna form our rolls. And there's a very simple technique to this. It might take you 1 or 2 to really get going, but you just take them out and you can pat them out like this just to get a nice little round disc, and then just fold it over itself and press in the seam and kind of start wrapping in the sides just a little bit. So you fold over, wrap in the sides, press in the seam, and just keep on doing that. And once that seam is closed, you're just gonna roll it out like you're rolling some Play-Doh, but just make sure you roll out the sides a little more so they get slightly pointier. Boom shalak, you've got your rolls, and now all you have to do is let those proof for about an hour until they've gained a little bit of air. And then I took a razor blade. This is a sharp razor blade that I use for making sourdough, but you can use a sharp knife and just give them a little slashy slash. And then we are going to bake our bread off at a really hot oven at around 450 degrees. And I just gave it a little spray down. And what you can do is you can put those in the oven. And if you really want to develop a nice crispy and dark crust, just give them a spray every 5 minutes in the oven. And then when they come out, roll perfection. Ow, hot, look at that. Just for camera purposes, I would never rip into bread like this, but I had 5 loaves, so I can sacrifice one. Oh, so good. I think this is gonna make the perfect sandwich bread. Crispy coating, crispy exterior, super soft and chewy inside. It's gonna be great. We've got a roll, so we are moving on to the chorizo. And most people think of chorizo as the really spiced up version, the Mexican or the Spanish version, but the Argentinian version that we're focusing on actually is not that at all. It doesn't have much spice, and it's made with red wine. So that's what we are going to be focusing on. And when you are making some type of homemade meat project, like cured meat or bacon, whatever it is, I suggest getting some high quality meat. So I headed over to my favorite butcher, Fleischer's, which is in my neighborhood, Park Slope. And it was great because I got a little help from my friend Ansel. Tell me about chorizo and sausage.
So with sausage, you're always looking for about a 70-30 meat to fat ratio. Traditionally with ground meats, you're looking 80-20. That extra 30 adds a lot of fat, but it also affects the texture, and it adds a much more pleasant mouthfeel. And as you mix your spices in, you emulsify the fat. If you're making sausage at home, what you're looking for is to almost knead it like bread, and then as you pull it apart, you'll see wisps develop in the fat. That shows that you're reaching a point of emulsification, which is where you're looking to be about when you're ready to make the sausage. Wow. Once you get those wisps, you're ready to go. If you can't find 70-30 blended ground pork, you can always take a regular conventionally ground pork, usually at 80-20, and add something a little bit fattier to it. So pork belly works perfect. It's a little bit fattier than the shoulder. It's more of a 50-50 split. So you'd want to do, say for 2 pounds of ground pork, add maybe a pound of pork belly. If you don't have a home grinder, you can put your meat in the freezer about 30 to 45 minutes. It's not going to be fully frozen, but it is going to be a lot more firm than if it just been sitting on your counter. When it's at that firmness, you can slice it and cut it into very, very small chunks and use that in place of ground meat.
Great tips from that guy. I feel like he deserves an ongoing segment in the sandwich series, at least when there's meat in these sandwiches. So we've got our pork belly, we've got our ground pork, but the first thing we need to do is infuse a little garlic in some wine. That is the first step to get some extra flavor, and we are using, of course, a Malbec, which is Argentina's most popular wine. Just pour some of that out, cut in half an entire garlic bulb, put that in there, and just let that simmer for about 15 minutes. When the wine garlic mixture cooled down, I took out the garlic cloves and I actually chopped those up into little pieces. And then to a big bowl, I added my ground pork, my chopped up pork belly, all of that garlic, poured in about a cup of wine. I hit it with a little paprika So we're gonna knead up that mixture just like it is some fresh dough and really get after that for about 5 minutes. And just like Ansel said, you got these wisps or whatever he was talking about, and you know that meat really starts, the fat starts to emulsify and creates these little threads. So that is a good sign that we have some serious sausage consistency. So here we go, we are making some sausage, and I am no expert considering I've never done this before. So this is sort of, you know, trial and error, you're learning with me. But I ordered this sausage stuffer on Amazon, and I ordered some pork casings as well, and just let those soak to remove some of the salt they came in and just moisten up a little bit. So when I set up the sausage stuffer, I was putting on the casing, not really knowing what I was doing, and when I was actually pumping it in and the sausage was coming out, I realized very quickly that I didn't put on the casing right because it was kind of twisting and it wasn't really giving me a smooth product. So what I did was the second time I put on the casing, I just focused more on really getting it on evenly. So just making sure that when you're putting on the actual lining, that the center of the lining is staying right in the center of that tube. Then when your sausage comes out, when you're pumping that down, it's not gonna be twisty and turny, and it's gonna come out in some nice even links. I put them on a little wire grate because what I'm gonna do is let those dry out in the fridge. I would suggest drying those out in the fridge for a few days. I like the consistency when they dry out a little longer, maybe 3 days or so. I only had a day to dry them out because I was filming the video. It still turned out fine. But I'm gonna move on to the chimichurri real quick, the final element before we get into the cooking of the sausage. And chimichurri is one of my favorite condiments ever. It's just a fresh, you know, herb and oil sauce. It's perfect, really. And I wanted to make a super traditional Argentinian style chimichurri. So what I did was I got a whole bunch of parsley, and then I took some garlic cloves and I peeled those and I chopped that up with the parsley. Chop that up until it is really, really fine. Then I added the garlic and parsley to a bowl, and I hit that with some dried oregano. You can use fresh oregano as well. I added a little bit of chili powder. I didn't have chili flakes, but you could totally use chili flakes. Then some black pepper, a little bit of salt, and then I hit it with white wine vinegar and apple cider vinegar. You can use really whatever vinegars you have on hand. That's what I had. And then of course your final element that brings it all together, just drizzle in that olive oil. And you really just want to pour in the olive oil until you get that perfect consistency, somewhere around here where it's not too thin and it's not too thick. Now you're gonna wanna let that marinate for a maximum flavor because you got a lot of raw ingredients in there and they're infusing and softening up a little bit. So that will be good in your fridge for days and it's just gonna get better. So not only did I make sausage for the first time, but I did something else for the first time. I actually grilled in my kitchen. I felt like because I had this fresh chorizo, I needed to get some smoky flavor in there to really up the ante. So I got my little hibachi style grill, and all I did was take the grate and put it over the burner with some charcoal and just let that fire up. Once that charcoal's heated up, you can just put on those chorizo links. And what happened was, since it was such a low fire, it doesn't mean that that's, you know, a bad thing. That's just like a slow smoke. So, you know, I was turning it around, and I even decided to put a little metal bowl over there to contain all of that smoke. So they really did get a nice low and slow smoky infusion. All right, let's bring this sandwich together. So what they do traditionally in Argentina is they take off the links, they slice them in half, and then you're just gonna douse a little bit of that chimichurri on that crispy bread, hit it with that sausage, and then of course add a little more chimichurri. Choripan, the first taste, 3 elements, really simple: bread, sausage, chimichurri. Here we go. In all other cases, I would want to be adding more to this, more sauce, more vegetables, whatever it is, but there's just something so special about the simplicity. It's very European, very South American, where, you know, you don't have to add so much. You really just appreciate the simple flavors, the combinations coming together for something really incredible. So I appreciate the simplicity of this sandwich right here.